All right, welcome to the Working on the Dad Pod. We are Alex and Ethan, a couple of dads that well, we don't have a lot of answers, but we have a few little kernels of wisdom that we'd like to pass along to you. Really have conversations about some of the things that I think we're all going through. I'm Alex, and with me is my co-host Ethan. How you doing, Ethan?
I'm doing well. I was a little thrown off by the word wisdom you used, but yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's a good
it's
idea.
generous.
Yeah,
It's
I
generous,
think it's
but
fine.
I'd like to think, I think there's the whole premise of this podcast, right? Is and we have been for years talking about various podcasts that we would want to do. Most of them revolve around sports hot takes that probably aren't very good if we ever put them to audio. But this was one. We've both got two kids,
It's true.
and we think that there's a lot of things that we've been through that we could help other people with. But more importantly than that, a lot that we work on a daily basis, talking with each other, with our other friends who are dads, but also wisdom to be gained from listeners. So I think there's going to be some episodes that we have. Each episode we're going to tackle a different topic here, but I think each episode there's going to be answers that we absolutely don't have, no matter how much research we do, or if we get an expert guest on, maybe they'll have the answers. But this is something where we're really hoping that if you're watching us on YouTube or listening iTunes, Spotify, you drop us a comment, drop us a review, hit us up on social media, and we'll drop those handles in the show notes. But you know, feel free to give us feedback because again, we don't have most of the answers, I would say, but I think a lot of these are conversations that I haven't always found to be super helpful or super digestible from a lot of other sources. There are fantastic dad resources out there, but we wanted to sort of lend our voice and let other dads know that they're not in this alone.
Yeah, and honestly, part of this podcast is us asking you for answers because we're hoping that you, as our listeners or watchers, that you are in fact, paying attention enough to maybe help us out. Maybe there's something we didn't know. In fact, there's probably definitely a lot we don't know. But we're just happy to be
Mm.
here and have this conversation and chat with you all.
Yeah, we have no idea what we're doing, and we're crowdsourcing the answers. Thanks. So
Yes.
the way we want to start it off with each episode is our wins and losses. We've all been there. We're all sort of trying to do the best we can, but sometimes we have those things each week that we accidentally, that we absolutely do crush. We knock it out of the park, and we feel great that we did that. But then we have those things where we're like, yeah, this was a learning moment. So Ethan, why don't you kick off your win of the week?
So this one was kind of tough because with the theme of this episode talking about daycare, which we all know is like super expensive and awesome. My older daughter was home for 3 total days. I'd say like two full days and 2 half days. So it was tough to find a win. But what I do want to say is we recently went through an issue with my daughter, like a bit of a sleep regression where she needed us to be in her room uh, to to fall asleep, and that went on for about like 6 weeks. And one day
Mm.
we watched a this woman who was doing like a free master class on sleep. And then she said, you stay till the end, you get my special offer. We weren't going to pay like $500 to like teach a kid how to sleep. But what I did take away,
Sure.
yeah, what I did take away was, um, like try having her rewrite the bedtime routine. So we did that,
Mm.
and after
Oh,
about 3 nights, my my toddler, she's 3.5, now goes to sleep. We changed the bedtime routine. It's pretty simple. We run around and play chase for about 5 minutes till she tires out. We
nice.
sing a couple songs. We brush the teeth. We ask each other where we're going in our dreams. I do one more song and I leave, and she goes to bed within 5 to 10 minutes. And man, that was a win. It was a win.
Nice. Yeah, I love the opportunities that we get sometimes to like give our kids autonomy.
Mhm.
Because I know that it's something my daughter, I have one daughter and one, my youngest is my son, and that is something she has straight up vocalized that she gets really tired of everybody telling her what to do and where to be. all day, every day between us, grandparents, school teachers, you name it.
Hmm.
But for me, my win is actually part of the bedtime routine as well. So one of the things that we've struggled with is at dinner time, right? And then after that, the way we've done things is we do dinner, and then getting my daughter to sit and eat and just actually do it. It doesn't matter if we're there, it doesn't matter if we're eating, it doesn't matter how we do it. Our she just struggles to do it. A lot of times she's gotten into a habit of, no matter what I'll put on the plate, doesn't matter if she loved it last week, she hates it. She's going to whine about it, she's going to complain about it. My wife actually found a hack um last night that was pretty cool, but that's her win, not mine, and so I will let you know if that one works.
I'm
But
team team. It's a team win. Team win.
it's a team win. I was a little more fed up with it and ready to throw food in the trash, and my
Right.
wife came in and saved the day a little bit. But after dinner time, she plays a little bit, and then we do snack, and we do a final snack before bed. She has to clean up first, so she does clean up, and then she's got X amount of time. I want to say it's like 40 minutes for cleanup and snack. And
Okay.
basically, the amount of snack time she has is dictated by how much she cleans up, right?
Makes
But she has to do that to get her final snack, because she always wants the snack. She never wants the dinner. She always wants the snack, and it might be something like tortilla chips or yogurt or you name it. But she's hyped about snack. But what she really struggles with is, like, I've got this fixed time of 7:35 that we're going to go into the bathroom, brush teeth, go potty, and start the actual, like, getting ready for bed process. And we tried the Google Home thing, right? Where I'd say, Google, set a timer for X number of minutes, however long it was, until 7:35. And then I could casually just be like, how much time is left on my timer? And it would say it, and she would understand, but she struggles with the idea of, like, what does 17 minutes mean? What
Sure.
does
Yeah.
8 minutes mean? I understand that 5 minutes is not a lot of time, and I understand that 20 minutes is a lot of time. So my win was actually taking our tablet. We have a Amazon Kindle Fire, and putting the timer on a stand on the dining room table where she's eating her snack, and she can watch it. It's got a circle function, and she's watching it dwindle, and she knows her numbers, and so she's watching the time go down. And the first time I tried it, she's sitting there eating, and then she starts playing, and then she look, oh, I need to go, kind of thing.
Nice.
And it created that sense of urgency, because otherwise what happens is the timer runs out. I didn't get to eat my snack. I'm hungry, blah, 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 blah. And, some of it is Oscar worthy acting, and some of it's
Sure.
legitimate. So really, that was our win. Um,
Nice. Nice. Good visual aid. I like it.
yeah.
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 We struggle a bit with um, dinner time too. It's not as formulaic as like a dinner cleanup snack, but our kid will run around. She'll take a couple bites, run, want to play with her baby sister, come back, and we have to keep saying, "Hey, just so you know, when we're done with dinner, there's no more food today." And
Yeah.
that's really started to help her kind of um, kick it into gear, but like we're and just trying to keep her at the table. So yeah,
Yeah.
so I feel like our problems are similar, which is really good for podcasting.
Yeah, and I one thing that we haven't actually tried, because my daughter doesn't want to do it, but we got her for Christmas a balance board, right? Just one of those little things that's like an arced piece of wood,
Hmm.
right? And she likes to play on it, but I'd seen on Instagram people using that for the kids to stand on. So it,
Hmm.
like, works on their energy, and then they stand at the table and they eat, and it makes them want to stay there a little bit longer and actually do it. But I'll let you know if she ever tries that. But I think there are some we struggle with that too. With her wanting to stay at the table and not just, like, sitting there and groaning, and, like, sitting there doing nothing for like 15-20 minutes, and then being like, okay, it's cleanup time, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so what about losses for the week? What do you got for losses?
So I kind of texted you about this earlier, and this is a good loss for our opening podcast because I hope it brings some of you all laughs. My wife goes to work before the girls wake up, so I 5 days a week. I do the preschool drop off.
Nice.
My wife feeds our nurses our infant, before she leaves, and then sometimes depending on the time, she won't go back to sleep in her crib, so my wife will just throw her into bed place her nicely into bed with me. And this morning, she was laying in bed with me. We were having a good time. She was like playing with my face. Realized I needed to clip her toenails. Fingernails. Sorry. Wow, podcasting voice. And then she stopped touching my face. I fell back asleep. Woke up to the sound of her crying on the floor. So she definitely bumped her head. Luckily, where she fell off on the bed. She didn't hit anything on the way down. Checked her. Pretty sure she's like good, no concussions or anything. But it's pretty funny.
I
So I started the day off with a possible concussion, and then of course had to text my wife about it. So good stuff.
so I will tell you from experience. My my daughter, the oldest, fell off the bed a couple of times when she was younger, and one of our good friends at the time who had a son right at the same age. She's
Mhm.
a pediatric physical therapist, and she basically allayed our concerns by saying at that age, up until about 2, because their skulls have not fully formed,
Mhm.
you actually, like, not saying make a habit of it or be
Sure.
okay with it,
Sure.
but because like their skulls are malleable and can
Mhm.
move a little bit, they're actually at much less risk of serious head trauma from a fall off a normal sized bed.
Oh yeah, my infant daughter, she I would say on a good week hits her head in some way twice a week, whereas
Sure.
with our older daughter, we were so paranoid about being the parents that like dropped the kid on the head, because that was like the worst insult you could say to like our parents' generation.
Sure.
That's like I think she probably only hit her head maybe like a handful of times in her first year until she like
Yeah.
started walking. So but like
Yeah.
sorry, second kid, but yeah, getting
Yeah.
your
But on that same level, when they fall off the bed, and our bedroom floor is like concrete terrazzo, it's not
oh wow,
carpet, and so
perfect.
it is blood curdling screams.
Sure, sure.
So that is always just like, oh my God, I feel like the worst person in the world right now. How could I let this happen? Blah, blah,
No,
blah. But yeah, my loss, I didn't drop my kid on
that's a
his
win,
head,
man.
but my second son, so the way I do my morning routine is wife and I both get the kids ready, and then I take the kids with me to the gym. I go to a gym that is just down the street from my kids' daycare. I take them to the gym because it costs $75 a month for all of us to be members at the gym, and it would cost $200 a month if I just dropped them off before going to the gym an
That's a
hour
good deal.
early.
Yeah.
Right. And so I take them to the gym with me. There's childcare there. They play, they enjoy it. Quite often, they're the only kids in the room, which is pretty awesome.
Good
And
deal.
because they're going from breakfast to the gym, then to school where they're going to have a pretty early snack, I never pack like snacks for them at the gym. It's just water bottles, diapers, and wipes for my youngest. He's 16 months old, maybe 17 months old now. And so I always do that. Well, earlier this week on Tuesday, I forgot the diapers.
Mm,
Um,
been there, man.
and of course, he did a big poop in his diaper while at childcare at the gym. He didn't have a blowout, luckily, but it smelled.
Mm,
He's 16 months old, so it's not just liquid breast milk poop. Hasn't been for a long time. It's pretty stinky. Um, so pick him up. The lady's like, "Hey, did you get my text? You didn't have a diaper." And I was like, oh crap, right? And of course my daughter is already complaining, it stinks so bad. We get in the car, and she's like, you're like, oh my God, this absolutely reeks, I'm gonna die. Like, the most dramatic, again, another Oscar worthy performance from my daughter. I'm like
mhm.
rolling down the windows. It takes maybe 4 minutes to get in our car and get to daycare, and you would think that she wasn't going to survive, right? You
Yeah.
would think that she was in a landslide or something. So we get there, and luckily, Tuesday is one of the days. I've let him poop his pants. He's sitting in it. I know that daycare has diapers for him. I don't have any diapers. Tuesday is one of the days where my son goes to daycare. My daughter spends the day with my mother-in-law. And so I take him up to the door, and I'm just like, smells like he may have had an accident in the car. And I can only
Nice.
pull off this move
Hmm.
because I lied, because I was like, I didn't want to say, I think he's been sitting in his own feces for 30 minutes.
Sure.
But I can only pull off this move when my daughter's not there, because she would be the one to be like, no, Dad, he pooped. He
Oh
pooped
yeah.
when we were at Child Watch at the gym, and you didn't bring diapers, and blah, 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 blah. And I hit him off. And they're like, oh, yeah, I can smell it. And thank God he's walking, because, like,
Mhm.
and it was one of the days where he didn't demand to be carried in by one of the teachers to his classroom. And so he just walked in, and they were like, whoa, yeah, we can smell it. I was like, yeah, might want to get that changed. Sorry about that. Hope he
Yeah.
doesn't do that in the future.
Uh,
So
uh,
yeah, that was my loss. That I straight up lied about the poop in the pants, and I made sure to pack 3 diapers in the gym bag the next time, just that way we have several instances to go.
and depending on who you ask, that lie could either be covering up your loss with a win or just a second loss. Because lying is bad, kids. Bad.
But yeah, speaking of daycare, that is a good segue into our main topic
Yeah, let's get into
of
it,
the
man.
day, which is childcare and daycare. And really, that's all the same thing. Whether you want to, there's all sorts of variations of this. Whether you're sending your kid to a traditional daycare, whether you have a nanny, maybe you nanny share, whether you're sending
Mhm.
your kids off to a grandparent's house, or whether you or your partner are a stay-at-home parent, right? And so there's all sorts of different variations of this, but Ethan and I both have our kids in daycare at least 3 days a week. Believe yours are both going 5 days a week. My son goes 5 days a week. My daughter goes 3 days a week. But it's one of those things where it almost seems like a rite of passage that if you want to have a dual income household, that's absolutely what you have to do. But daycare is freaking expensive. I know we've talked before about podcasts that we listened to that sort of explored that issue of
Mhm.
daycare when there was, I think it was a bill going through Congress for more
Yeah.
funding. I don't think it passed. You would know more, but
Yeah, it didn't.
but daycare is freaking expensive, and there's plenty of anecdotes out there, and I don't have percentages, but there's plenty of anecdotes out there of daycare costing more than mortgages, costing upwards of a third of take-home income, not pre-tax income, but take-home income. And a lot of those figures are colored by the idea of having multiple kids like we do.
Mhm.
I think when you have one kid, it's not as astronomically high as a percentage of two incomes, but it is still crazy. And then we're in the stage with our daughter, especially, where she's now at the age where, like, when summer comes, she wants to do camps, right? She wants to, we can send her to daycare. They have camp, which is roughly the same price, but then there's
Right.
also other camps. She's into ballet now, and she wants to do a ballet camp. Or like, okay, great, we'll send you to ballet. Well, ballet only runs till 1 o'clock in the afternoon
And then what are you going to
versus
do the
day.
rest of the day?
Right.
Right.
And one of and we then there's also the whole coverage thing, right? I just mentioned the idea of, like, it cost me $200 extra a month if I wanted to send my kids at 8 instead of 9. And
Sure.
luckily, I'm self-employed, so I have the flexibility to show up at my desk at 9:30 after dropping the kids off. But not everybody has that, and so they may have to choose the 7 o'clock drop off or the 8 o'clock drop off. And then my kids, when they stay, they get picked up by at 3, right, and not 5.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to go to 5, that's even more money and more money on
Mhm.
top of that. And so there's a lot of daycares, except with the exception of the very first daycare we sent our daughter to. Um, every daycare that we've looked at, their pricing model is something like that, where it's like, here's our base rate, and you're like, oh, that's pretty reasonable, and you're like, yeah, that's 9 to 12, and we're like, what am I going to do 9 to 12? Like, that's
Yeah.
that's not exactly enough to hold down a job. And so you have some parents who manipulate their work schedule so that one parent is going in super early and getting off early, and the other
Mhm.
parent goes in late and stays late, picking up different shifts and stuff like that. But it can be hard to manage that. Um, you also get that feeling that you're not parenting your kid enough sometimes when, they're doing all the development, especially, with that first kid, and you send them off to daycare and they're out of the house and you're like, but but I'm supposed to be their parent. I'm supposed to be their
Yeah.
caretaker. I'm supposed to be providing for them. And then the issue of, like, I know your youngest, who's under a year old, is able to go to the same school as your daughter, and we wanted
Mhm.
that for our son. But the daycare we have our daughter in and our son now didn't accept him until he was 1. So we had a year of him being at home and me
Mhm.
having to do that thing where I spent a lot of time with him and then stayed up late to get my work done. Right. And
Yeah.
so that wasn't super easy. That wasn't super feasible. And then, you know, camps are the same way. Where, like,
Yeah.
he has to, if we want to. There are some cheaper camps out there, but he can't go to them. He can't go to them until he's maybe 2, possibly 3. And there's even some where, like, the gym I go to is the YMCA, and they've got summer camps, all sorts of sports camps and things like that. I can't send my daughter until she's a rising kindergartner, which won't be until next summer.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff like that. And then on top of that, as you mentioned, with your daughter being home a lot with your infections, kids get sick. I had it
Yeah.
this week. My son, he luckily didn't get sick, but one of his classmates got hand, foot, mouth disease,
And then you're
right?
constantly
And they
on
were
alert.
watching him and they were like, hey, he might have some bumps on his hands, his feet. If he gets a fever, we'll have to send him home. So basically, from like Wednesday morning on, I've been sitting there waiting for a message from school like, okay, am I going to have to cut my workday short? Am I going to have to do this? Am I going to have to do that?
Yeah, we're in the same boat. Obviously, luckily, my both girls are at school today. But my older daughter woke up on Monday morning. She's got her saying her ear hurt. Take her to the pediatrician as soon as there was an appointment, which was like 9:30. She gets her prescription, but says don't fill it yet, and then no fever. Send her to school. She takes a nap at school, which is like something she never does. Wakes up, fever, have to take her home. It's within 24 hours of school. Most schools have a policy where if they have a fever above the 100.4, the CDC's threshold, they can't go to preschool for at least 24 hours. So that meant she was home Tuesday. So, of course, she felt perfectly. You couldn't even know she was sick. I send her back Wednesday. Boom, 11:30, call 101.6. So now she's home yesterday. And of course, totally fine again. And
Yeah.
she's there today, which is great. It's 10:22 a.m. now as we are recording here on the East Coast. So hopefully, hopefully she makes it through the day. But we're coming near crunch time. Um,
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned earlier was just like the options around. So I think it's kind of important to just talk about the market's kind of like state by state. I'm in the DC metro area, for those of
Sure.
you who don't know, which is everyone except Alex. And and one of the reasons why we opted for daycare, not just for the socializing, which I'll talk about in a minute because of just the age of my daughter and what we just went through as a world. Um, it's because also in the state I live in, there are very strict laws about nannies. If you have a nanny, you can't just like pay your nanny cash or Venmo or check at the end of the week. You have to register with an EIN number with the IRS. You
Yeah.
have to provide the same 12 days off between of vacation days. You have to negotiate sick time. You have to give them money and options for healthcare. So you're basically like running employment. So that
Hmm.
hourly rate that you're negotiating with them is like hopefully includes all that, but not necessarily. And
Yeah.
frankly, we did not want to do that paperwork. So we opted for daycare because frankly, once if you factor in time, money, and just like you got to think of a daycare as like a contractor because you're dropping them off there. They're in control. They're not your employee. It's just a service. It ended up just being the way to go.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned just the delay where how your son couldn't go to school for the first year.
Yeah.
So for us, my daughter was born in November of 2019, so like right before the pandemic hit.
Hmm.
We were on wait lists at 4 daycares. Um, Pandemic hit. We were like, we don't know how this is going to go. I was working from home. My wife was on admin leave because of the nature of her job. It has to be on site, so she and her colleagues were just like being paid essentially not to work. So
Yeah.
we kept our kid home until she was 22 months old, when
Yeah.
we were lucky to keep getting off the wait list, and we kept deferring and deferring, and they like kept our spot. And ultimately we were just like, she's also not talking yet, like other
Yeah.
than like 10 words. And we were like, we really need to like pull the trigger, get her socializing in. And honestly, she started talking like 4 weeks later, like full on
Yeah.
sentences, and it was great. And she loves it there. But man, oh man, as you mentioned before, it is a drain on the income. I'm going to be totally honest with all of you guys. My two daughters' monthly tuition for this daycare um, is so much money that it's essentially my wife's entire pre-tax income.
Yeah.
um and that's, and like you, and you know, you're lucky that like, well, not you personally, but Alex cited the statistics that nationwide it can be anywhere from a third to 50% of an income. But
Yeah.
like, my wife is basically working to pay for our childcare. And
Right. And
like, if she stayed home and we only sent one of them, we'd actually be losing money. So it was a lose-lose.
yeah, and that's the dichotomy that a lot of people have to make, because your wife is essentially investing now to keep her career going so that she doesn't have to stop it, have a glaring hole in her resume. And it's not uncommon where people are having this thing where like they're essentially working, both parents are working just so one of them can pay for the childcare to not have that gap in their resume, because people want to not have to fall down that rabbit hole. And yeah, and that becomes a really big problem. We are not paying as much as that. Um, Luckily, just because of where we live, and we
Mhm.
live in on the Treasure Coast of Florida, which is just above what people would consider South Florida, just above Palm Beach County, West Palm. But one of the things that really has been nice for us living in Florida is the fact that next year my daughter will be in VPK standing for voluntary preschool. And in Florida, you get 9 to 12 covered by the state, right? It's
That's
like a
awesome.
subsidy that goes into the various preschools. They have to
Good.
sign up and be accredited. I don't know what the threshold is,
Hmm.
but her current school is one of them. And so from 9 to 12, we can send her 5 days a week for free. And she actually has a little bit more of a curriculum and things like that. But then we're still going to pay for the aftercare until, 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like not everybody has that. I know we have friends in New York City, and New York City has an even more robust, preschool payment system, but most places don't. I would say it's actually like a lot more don't than do.
Yeah.
So, and but that's kind of where it is, where if you're choosing to do daycare, and I think in a lot of our episodes, this is one of the first episodes, this is the first episode we're recording, and
This
one
is
of the
number
first we're going
one.
to release, but we're going to try in a lot of these episodes to like come up with some practical solutions to help people out. If we're talking about potty training or sleep training, or you name it, practical solutions, things we've done at least that have worked that you can look into. Daycare, there's not like some big hack here, because like the only hack that exists, and I saw this on Twitter, the only parenting hack there really is to live close to grandparents. And I would extend that to aunts, uncles, family members, supportive people that are willing to take on some of that childcare load for free. And
Yeah.
we're lucky enough to have that, where both of our moms live close by. And so the reason that my daughter only goes 3 days a week is because she spends all day Tuesday and all day Thursday with my mother-in-law. On Mondays and Fridays, my mom picks up both kids and takes them until 5 o'clock. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, my mother-in-law picks up my son. So really, my only commitment during the workday after I drop them off is to pick up my son on Wednesdays at 3, which is super nice. And then
Yeah.
we have friends on the like even further down that spectrum. We have a couple of friends that live close to their grandparents as well, and they send their son every single day to grandparents all day long, and
That's
he's never touched daycare. And you know I'm jealous, but at the same time, like that's the setup that everybody there is comfortable with. They love it. and Godspeed for them. But for a lot of people, it's this waiting game where, assuming you're sending your kids to public school,
Mm-hmm.
you're waiting and waiting and waiting until
Oh
you
my
can just
God.
get out from under the burden.
When my daughter, my older one, goes to public school, I'm honestly going to feel like a rich person. And I'm
Right?
also going to take this opportunity to bank on the fact that my mother-in-law, who does live 20 minutes away and is the opposite of a childcare hack, because, she doesn't help, won't listen to this podcast. So I think it's like totally, she probably doesn't even know what a podcast is, honestly. So you know what? I'm sorry. I'm
Roll
so
the
jealous.
dice.
I'm so jealous of the fact that you and your wife and both your moms are there and have that option. Like that's amazing. I definitely feel like the potential to have a great relationship with my mother-in-law was blown out the door. She might as well be out of state. In fact, my wife's going to be gone for a weekend in the first weekend of June. And I'm originally from California, everybody, Los Angeles. My dad is flying in from Los Angeles to help me with that weekend, because I don't feel like I can ask the woman, their own grandma, who lives 20 minutes away. So
Yeah.
luckily, my dad is in a good place with his career and financially, and frankly, just misses his baby girls. So I'm really excited for this upcoming weekend. Alex and I and our other two roommates tried to have a dad's weekend the summer before senior year in college. I'm hoping it's exactly like that. Lots of beer pong, lots of partying. You know,
Yeah. It'll be I'm sure yeah, I'm sure that'll be the responsible thing with two young girls
yeah,
there.
absolutely. I'll teach them how to play.
I
Milk, water.
listen, I think you and your dad can dominate them,
Yeah,
honestly, if
it's
I'm
gonna
if I'm
be
scoping making odds. But yeah, I mean, and that's really the tough thing where, it's really nice to have supportive parents, and I feel very lucky to have that privilege of not
sure.
just moms, but like, you know, dads too,
Sure.
grandpas. Like my mom or my wife's father my father-in-law, he and my mother-in-law are still married,
Mm-hmm.
hanging out, and I think he's not as much of a baby guy, right? He's not he's
Mm-hmm.
not as big on the changing diapers portion of things,
But he's good with your
but
daughter.
he's good with my daughter. And there's a situation coming up next Thursday where my mother-in-law has some stuff going on, and my father-in-law, he's going to substitute in.
That's
He's
great.
going to substitute in,
He's got
and
substitute grandparents, man. That's
he's
great.
going to substitute in, take a little time off. He's still working, but both of our moms are retired. He's still working, but he owns his own business, so he's got the flexibility to do that. But I have to pick up my son from school because that's where he draws the line. He's like, I
Yeah.
can do the one kid,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
you're on your own with the
Right.
younger one,
He's a one and done kind of guy.
the, the
I've
one
met
who craps his pants and goes to school.
I've met your father-in-law, and he and I got off to a shaky start. I'm not gonna lie, but I love his vibe. He and I are cool now, and that's great. Um,
Yeah,
I did want to say, because we both have supportive wives. We are actually recording this today, Friday, May 12th. So happy Mother's Day. We love
right.
you so much. In two
Yeah,
days, you both get to do whatever you want. Thanks so much for listening. Really glad we fit this in.
yeah,
Anyway, back to the
yeah,
episode.
yeah,
I just want to say, we're getting to the point where we're going to be wrapping up soon, and Alex mentioned uh, that we don't really have solutions in this situation because daycare is what it is. It's the market. Alex mentioned that there was a bill that President Biden tried to get through. His signature Build Back Better was going to include free daycare for kids 3 and up. That, of course, did not make it through Congress in
yeah,
any shape or form. So that's not happening until things get a little bluer on the hill, which might not happen, but that's another discussion.
yeah,
But I do want to say that you've got to find the thing that works for you. We
yeah,
opted, as Alex mentioned, for 5 days a week with both girls. Why? Because we just need to be able to work. We're in the full day. They've got the three tiers. They've got the 9 to 12, which is the half day, the 9 to 3, which is the school day, and then the 9 to 5, which is the full day. Um, you but by paying for full day, you can drop off as early as 7 and pick up as late as 6, no extra charge. There's a lot of
Nice.
daycares in the area um, where they're honestly like paying by the minute after like 4:30. So
Yeah.
we opted for, we might be paying a little more upfront. I don't think we've ever once done a 7 to 6. We've done like a
Yeah.
7:30 to 5:30 once on like the weirdest work day for both of us.
Sure.
But you got to find what's right for you. We go to, I walk the kids to daycare, which is 2 blocks away from my house every morning.
Nice.
I come back home, drink some coffee, log into work. I'm luckily still within my younger daughter's first year, so I'm like milking a little bit of an hour of paternity leave every morning to make this work for us. Um, I'm fortunate enough to have a job that allows that, but really, I just wanted to say we don't have an answer this time. Hopefully,
Yeah.
in our later episodes, we will.
We'll have
Um,
something a little more tangible. But
right.
to
You just
to
got to
to
find
your
what works for
point,
you.
yeah, to your point, I mean, really the only solution in this economic situation, because what I didn't touch on earlier, we've talked about how tough it is for parents. Daycare workers are not like taking all this money that we get and living large, right? They're getting paid in some cases 10, $12 an hour, maybe 15 if they're lucky. But this is one of the things that, this bill that was on the table a couple years ago. I don't want to talk about it like it's current news and it just got voted down. This was 2021.
Yeah.
But it's really why government subsidy, and I know a lot of people aren't always for that, and that's okay, but why government subsidy is really the only answer to making daycare cheaper, because what this was talking about is it was about $250 billion to inject into daycares as a subsidy, and it would lower tuition costs and raise teacher pay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think a lot of people, when they get into stuff like the minimum wage debate about whether it should be $15, everybody pictures flipping burgers. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in the podcast I was listening to, they were using a lot of anecdotal examples. And so it wasn't like this huge statistical stuff, but they were talking to daycare teachers who loved daycare with a passion, felt like it was their calling, had maybe an associate's degree in it, and then went and worked at Starbucks because Starbucks paid them more.
Yeah.
And
And
they
that's,
used it to supplement. And so they're working 60, 70 hours a week between the two jobs just so they can make ends meet. And so it's not just one of those things where like daycare's got this, running this racket here where everybody's making off, where it's like by the time you pay to keep the lights on, pay for the rent at the building you're in, pay all your teachers, pay for all the little things you need within the school, they're working on razor thin margins, paying their staff like crap. And I'm not blaming them for it,
no.
because they can't just charge more money, because eventually they charge enough money and then you're going to drive everybody away,
Right.
or at least a large percentage of it. And so these are all the sort of, and you talked about in your area, being a nanny as a business. I know we did a nanny share a little bit when my daughter, right before she went into daycare. And that presents its own problems too. I
It
mean,
does.
even if you've done all the paperwork and have a salaried employee, right? Like maybe they're doing it to just make some money. Maybe it's not their life calling. And maybe they're like, oh, I get my dream job as a engineer or marine biologist or whatever, I'm out, and then you're stuck scrambling. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what happened to us. Not in the same way, but it was just like this nanny was taking our daughter 3 days a week, and then we were coming and getting her and all that stuff. And it was with friends who lived a few blocks away. So it was pretty manageable. And then just one day she was like, I can't handle two kids.
Mm.
Right. And she was originally hired by the other family.
So
It
they got
wasn't like we
the
came into this agreement. She was taking care of that kid, and then we added into the package and we paid her, and it was super cost efficient for us, because she was like a college student at the local community college, local
Mhm.
state college.
Yeah.
And so she just decided, and we were out. And that was, I remember it distinctly. It was July 3rd, 2019. Because like the next day, she was going to be home with us. We were going to be off work anyway. And then July 5th was a Friday, and we were just sent scrambling. And we basically had to put our daughter in the only respectable place that we could find,
Mhm.
right? That had spots. Because I mean, like, if anybody has ever put their kid in childcare, as Ethan was talking about being on wait lists and getting off wait lists, it becomes one of those things that they send home the signups for daycare like in February to start
Mhm.
in the next August for
Yeah.
us. And so
There
when we signed up our son, we had this thing like, um, you know, our son was born in late February and the signups were due in mid February of
Mhm.
last year. And
Mhm.
so we're having to ask our moms, like, hey, how much do you guys, we have to do this thing every year where we're talking to moms about what their ideal schedule is, which kids they have and when, kind of thing. How much do you want to take care of this kid you've never even met yet?
Right.
Like,
Right.
how much? Give me a number, right? And they're like, I don't know. We're like, I get that,
Yeah.
but we have to put something on the paper. And so
Yeah.
we signed him up for, and I'm like, and not just how much do you want to take care of him, but again, because of the age limit, how much do you want to take care of him starting on March 1st of next year,
Right.
13 months from when we're having this conversation.
That's a tough
And
one.
so it's very, just a very weird thing. So we've done the nanny share. We've done the, like, when my daughter was first born, because of my schedule, my mom was not retired, did not live down here. My mother-in-law was taking my daughter some. I was taking my daughter some. I was, we were just sort of like hodgepodging it together a lot. And then we got the nanny share, and then we eventually just took the nosedive into the deep end, on daycare. And it really is one of those things where, like, if we ended up switching daycares after the pandemic, and then switching again when we had just incident that maybe I'll go into on a different episode, but just an incident that we didn't really love. Um, and so we've been lucky enough to have some good daycares in our life, but I know it's not for everybody, because the other thing we haven't even talked about is, like, the we've talked about the teacher pay, but, like, that also impacts the quality.
Right.
It does, because there's a lot of these places that there are a lot of people who are very, very passionate about it, similar to, I would say, the teaching profession at large.
Mhm.
We know people specifically who have done this, where it's like, I I love teaching young minds, but I'm not getting paid enough for this shit, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just cannot keep up with this.
It,
So
it's
that's
it's
really
true.
where, we kind of throw our hands up at the end of this episode and say, do what works for you. But the only advice that I think I could give anybody, because we are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, is like, if you are someone who, if you've resigned yourself that you're going to send your kid to private school, you've resigned yourself to paying for school at, until they're out of college, right?
Sure.
Like, barring scholarships or whatever. That's fine. That's a decision you've made. But if you're struggling to make ends meet paying for daycare, and then you're going to send your kid to public school, recognize that it's temporary.
Yeah.
Keep on keeping on. And when the days are tough, remember that, like, it'll eventually pass. And
And
you can get you if you can survive and keep your head above water, you can come out the other side.
yeah.
So
And regardless of how any of you listening feel about um, about whether teachers make too much or too little, however you feel about unions and their rights, we're not going to influence you any other way. The only thing we can say is if you're listening to this pod, we know for a fact that you love your kids. And no matter the daycare, childcare situation you're in, you're going to do what's best for you. You're going to make what you can afford affordable. And if it doesn't work, you're going to try something else. And if you have any questions or anything about what we went through to make the decisions we did, we use us as sounding boards. Again, any ideas you have, if you just want to vent about daycare, we're here to listen, just like you took the time to listen to us today. And I just want to say, to wrap up this discussion, it is May 12th, 2023. It is the last day of Teacher Appreciation Week. No matter
yeah,
when you listen to this, thank you to all the teachers, especially those at mine and Alex's daycares and all around the world. Happy Mother's Day once again to all the moms out there, especially our two wives, who we hope will be supportive enough to listen to this episode. And thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us.
yeah, excited to go on this journey with you guys, for
Yeah.
sure.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.